You've probably seen by now how easy UpScale is to use, but you probably aren't aware how easy it is to assemble and install. Hi, I'm Brian from the UpScale Scale, and today I'm going to assemble an UpScale and install one. Once you unbox your UpScale, you'll see the parts as shown. The scale isn't included, but we're just showing it here for reference. We'll look at the mechanism first. The mechanism is most likely going to be locked, so all you need to do is it slides vertically, then it'll pull out. This whole mechanism slides on a slider so it can hook and lock on the screws. Now it's back to lock. Another feature on this is we have 11 holes here for 11 different height settings to adjust to different height scales. We just move this screw to the hole we want and we can adjust it to accommodate any future scale you have. We have a bracket that attaches to your scale. We use double-sided adhesive, and that's going to attach with these two smaller screws with smaller nuts. We have some rubber feet for the back. We've got 3 plastic covers, and then there's 5 different ways to attach to different wall surfaces. Everything from drywall to hollow doors to brick and concrete to glass, ceramic, and tile. Let's go over the supplies and tools you might need to do an installation. It really doesn't require much. If you're putting it into drywall, all you need are these few items here. You need a screwdriver, a pencil to mark, a tape measure or ruler, and isopropyl alcohol. We do supply the 11/32 wrench to tighten the nuts down. If you're going to install into other surfaces, like a hollow door, you're going to need a 5/16. If you're going into brick or cinder block or other masonry, you can use a 3/16 inch bit. You might want to use a stud finder. You could use some masking tape to mark on the wall. If you're trying to put a mark on stone, it's difficult to see a pencil. And then you may need a drill depending on where you're attaching to. The first step we're going to do is we're going to install the bracket to the top of your scale. And it does just use double-sided adhesive, so it is pretty simple, but there is a little bit of a technique to it. This bent flange on the bracket can help guide you and keep it square to the frame, and then you can slide it. If you angle the back end of it down a little bit, you can slide it sideways till you get the 2 goalposts kind of centered around your LCD, and then you can press it down. If you want, you can mark the center line of your scale and the center line of the bracket to help you align it, but I usually just eyeball them. First thing we need to do is we need to clean the surface of the scale with isopropyl alcohol. This is a must. You really can't skip this step because that's all that's holding your scale when it's up off the wall is that double-sided adhesive. So now that you got that all clean, we're going to pull the release film. I'm going to put it along the edge here and kind of eyeball it where I want it. Doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm going to press it down. And you really need to press this firmly. And here's kind of the tough part. Is you have to let this sit for at least 24 hours. 48 hours is even better. You have to give time for that tape to adhere and really be stuck down. But really keep pressing on it, make sure it's pressed down nice, and let it sit. So while we're waiting for this bracket to adhere, there's still a few things we can do. We can get the back of the UpScale ready to attach to the wall. And that involves putting on either the 3 little rubber feet, or if this is going to tile or stone, we would attach the 3 pieces of adhesive tape. So let's get started and let's attach the 3 feet. They go in the corners here above the little keyhole. Another goes on the bottom corner. And the last one, the third one, It's going to go kind of in the middle, but you want to be off that edge. You don't want it curving around. So somewhere on the flat portion over on this side, and now you've got the feet installed. We don't use the feet if we're going to attach with double-sided tape. Double-sided tape is the easiest way attached to the wall, so I'm not going to go through that step, but you would clean off the back with isopropyl alcohol, peel off the white piece, stick it on. When we get ready to put it on the wall, we'll peel off the red film. Determining the location of where you're going to install is one of the most important steps. In order to do this, we're going to need your scale with the bracket attached and your upscale mechanism. We're looking to make sure we avoid grout lines so that 1 foot isn't setting on a grout line and giving us a bad reading on our scale. The scale is placed 4.5 inches from the wall. So we'll get that placed properly. And now we'll look and see if there's a stud in this location. We may want to attach intentionally hooked to a stud. If not, we'll use the hollow wall anchors. So I'm going to use the stud finder and see where this stud is. So here's one side of the stud. I can mark that and come from the opposite direction. And here's the other side. Now, if I'm wanting to attach to the stud, I'm going to have to put my mechanism where the screw holes are centered between those two lines, and then I can move the scale over. And once it's here, I can determine, am I still not hitting the grout line? Is that a good location? If that is, I'll put my screws in this center line between the studs. But in this case, I'm really wanting it over here closer to this grout line. So I'm not so concerned. Now that I know there's no stud in this direction, I can mark my holes at 7 and 11 and get ready to install. So I've added my 2 marks on the wall where I want to put the scale. It's at 7 and the other's at 11. I'm also showing how you mark for if you're going to install with the double-sided tape. You put your mark at 11 3/4, and I put it on tape because if it's on stone, you probably can't mark it, but you put your masking tape on. And when you do go to put this one on, you'll peel your tape and you line the top of the scale, the mechanism, with that line. And that's how you determine a location. So now we're going to insert the SnapSkru anchor. And these, you don't need to do any drilling. The tip is self-tapping into the wall. If you push it in a little bit, it'll sink right into your drywall. The end has a big Phillips end, so you can turn it in with your screwdriver. And you just keep pressing in and turning, and it'll slowly start cutting into your wall and making your hole. Just take it nice and easy. And there we go. Just get it so the head's snug to the wall. You don't want to over tighten it. Next, we're going to install the wood screw into the anchor. And that spins in very easily. But we don't want to put it in all the way. We're going to leave the head out maybe 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch because we're going to need to slip the mounting plate behind it. So we don't screw this one down all the way. And there's the snap. It tells you that the snap screw locked in. And I'm going to leave this head sticking out. And now I'm going to do the same for this. I'll put in the anchor and the screw. We're going to attach our mechanism to our bracket that's on our scale. To do this, we want the scale at the edge of a table where this bracket is overhanging. We overhang it because the screws have to go in from the bottom. And we'll need room for a screwdriver to be able to tighten those. I found it's easiest to put both in at the same time. Hold them with your fingers. Flip your mechanism over and put the 2 screws through the holes. And then you can hold this with your thumb. Then the lock nuts have a nylon insert that has to go on top. The rounded end of the nut is on the top surface. So now we put it on a little screw, turn it slightly. You won't be able to turn it down very tight because the screws hit the threads, and you're going to need to use the wrench and a screwdriver to finish tightening them. So now that we have those on really loose, we're going to use our 11/32 wrench and the screwdriver and tighten them down, but we don't tighten them down fully. This looseness allows it to wiggle back and forth. When we have it on the wall, this will allow us to get our scale nice and vertical. So just snug these down a little bit. We want it to still be able to move. So the next step, we're going to attach our mechanism to our screws here. But before we do that, we're going to remove this height adjustment screw. And we're going to use our 11/36" wrench and a screwdriver. So now we're going to attach the upscale mechanism to the wall. Put it through those slots. And it does help having the height adjuster because we can now move it out of the way where we can get to this lower screw. And we're just going to snug them down. You don't want to over tighten these. Just get it so that it stays without a lot of slippage on your wall. So in this next step, we're going to adjust the height of the mechanism. So to do this, we want to make sure that our scale is at our 4.5 inches from the wall. So we'll move this to the right spot. Once it's there, what we're going to do is we're going to just gently pull up on this part here that has the 2 holes in it. And when that pulls up, you're going to see it's going to bring up the 2 screws. And we pull this up until the screws just touch that slot. Once it touches the slot, that's our initial location, and we look and see which hole is closest to it. And in this view, it's the far one in the back there, right here, but we drop it 1 complete hole below, and that's the screw we're going to put it in. This gives it a little bit of slack. You can see now that the screw has a little bit of gap between the screw and the slot. And then we'll put our locking screw back on. And then we'll tighten that down, and you've got your scale properly adjusted. So now we're going to install the covers. We're going to start with the bottom cover. This bottom cover, you'll see that there's this little nub. That's going to end up getting centered on this hole here. So usually because of the baseboard, there's not enough room, so we're going to lift up the mechanism, and then we're going to slide this over the top of here, and then you'll hear it click when it centers on that pin. Now that cover's on. We install the top cover next. The bottom of it has a little hook. The top part's a snap. We put the hook on the bottom slot and it'll just rotate around and click onto the mechanism. So the last cover we put on is the wall cover. You'll notice it has this little tab that hangs down. That's going to go through the slot in the top of the wall bracket. We need to kind of open it up so it can go around the sides of the mechanism. That will go right through the slot, and there you have it. So the next step is we're going to get it square with the wall. So we're going to pull it up, and once we get close to the wall, we lift up on the scale, and it'll hook right on and stay. And if we left these screws loose enough, we should be able to adjust it to the proper angle. We'll get it nice and vertical, and then with our wrench and screwdriver, we'll tighten these. To properly use your upscale, you first lift it vertically to unlock it, and then just let it go down. When it gets to the floor, every time you have to wake it up, let your scale zero, then you can step on and weigh yourself. When you're done, you'll just lift it back up and lock it on.